Hi, Terry.
Hi, Abby.
We did it. How are you?
Great. How are you doing?
I'm good. Where are you right now?
New Jersey.
Okay, so we're in the same time zone at the moment. Well, I'm so glad to have you here. I know that much of your life was changed by a huge body change that happened to you. Can we start there and you tell us what happened and how it happened?
Absolutely. So I woke up at 37, about 80 pounds overweight, with a 2-year-old baby and a 6-year-old. My daughter was 6 years old. Still wearing pregnancy clothes, not really be able to go up and down the stairs, it just not feeling great. And I ended up getting hospitalized twice for what I thought were heart attacks or strokes or something. I was having extreme chest pains, but it ended up being very extreme panic attack.
Wow.
And unbeknownst to me, I had entered perimenopause at 37 and everything went haywire at that point. Now, you know how they say ignorance is bliss. I had no clue. I did not know I was in perimenopause because, I mean, this was 12 years ago, right? So we didn't have as much information 12 years
Oh,
ago.
yeah, for sure.
Yeah, so I was totally in the dark. I remember I started my journey because I thought I needed to lose weight. I thought all these things were happening because I was overweight. And I had started counting macros. I started lifting weights. I was paying attention to my lifestyle, my stress, my sleep, all these things. And I would lay in bed and get a hot flash, and I would get excited about it. I was like, this is amazing. My metabolism's kicking in. I'm burning body fat because that I was so clueless about being in perimenopause. So
Wow.
perspective is really important during this stage. If you're as clueless as I am, it's a
Well, I
good
mean,
thing.
you were so young. I mean, you were so young. And even though now we know that that age range can be included in perimenopause, we definitely didn't know then. What were you doing? Were you working at that time?
So I had my own marketing agency and I was
Okay.
about 16, 18-hour days and I had
Oof.
two little kids.
Mm.
And I was very overwhelmed, very stressed, overworked, no time for anything, couldn't lose the weight. I gained the majority of it during my first pregnancy at 30. And then I just kept gaining and gaining and gaining, and I just couldn't get it off. Um, all the way into 37, 39 is really when I started to see results.
So okay, so you went into the hospital, you had these panic attacks, and what did they tell you you need to do?
Nothing. They said go follow up with a cardiologist. Here's the Xanax. Go home. You're
Mhm.
doing this. You think about losing some weight. And so the first time it happened, I was like, yeah, yeah, whatever. This is ridiculous. I don't have time for this nonsense, right? And I went right back to the hamster wheel.
Mhm.
And then I figured it was just a fluke. It wasn't really going to repeat itself, but it did. It repeated itself. And
Mm.
it really scared the bejesus out of me
Mhm.
because I thought to myself, wow, they can't figure it out because, I was convinced something's really wrong and they just couldn't figure it out. And so I started taking my weight loss a lot more seriously.
So how did you start? What was the first thing you did? Because at this point you weren't focused on health, nutrition, working out. So like, I think that can feel very overwhelming for somebody who's especially overweight. How did you figure out like which baby step to start with?
Well, I am a self-diagnosed overachiever
Sure, of course.
and a workaholic and I'm a recovered workaholic. I really have to focus on relaxing now.
Mm.
But I just went after all the diets I could get my hands on, right? So I started doing my own research. I was like, all right, keto, South Beach, fruitarian, vegan. I was vegan for 6 months. Okay.
Mm.
That did not go well.
Mhm.
I did all the things. I spun
Mhm.
my wheels for about 2 years till about 39. And I did lose about 30 pounds. but it was through the creation of my own diet, which I made up because none of the diets before that worked out for me. I would just yo-yo. I would just yo-yo and come right back to where I was at before, and then yo-yo again, and then come right back. And so it finally dawned on me that diets do not work because they eliminate entire food groups. And that for me personally was not sustainable. I couldn't imagine living my entire life never eating a piece of bread or pasta or rice or meat or anything. I like to eat everything.
Hmm.
And so I made up my own diet and I invested into a Peloton and rode that Peloton like my life depended on it. I was actually on there probably about 2, 3 times a day.
Wow.
Yes, and I did
And
drop.
had you ever had any like workout regimen before?
No, that was
No.
sacrilege where I came from.
Wow. Wow. That's hard. That's really hard.
Yes.
Wow. Okay, so how
Yeah.
did you figure out which diet you were going to make for yourself? How did you do it?
I was completely clueless back then. So I decided I was going to make one giant, massive salad and just eat all day long. I was chewing all day long. And it did not have any protein, which was, I was pretty close to the right solution. When I look back at it in retrospect, I was just missing the lean protein component, but I was eating all day. And
Mm.
so that was eliminating any type of, I wasn't hungry throughout the day. I did not have any cravings. The only other thing that I would also mention is I did not realize back then that I also needed to cut alcohol out because it wasn't doing me any favors. So there were a lot of tweaks that I could have made, but I just didn't know at that time. So, but I did drop about 30 pounds. And then I got really, really scared that I was going to lose it back. And so I reached out to a coach who specialized in women in midlife. And that's when I started learning about weightlifting, resistance training, specifically with progressive overload. I learned about macros and how to make sure I'm eating a balanced diet throughout the day that included protein, carbs, and fat. I learned about the importance of recovery and sleep and hydration and all the components of lifestyle medicine, essentially. And that's when I really started to see a lot better results.
And did you, how did you know that that was officially perimenopause? Were you having changes in your cycle as well?
I knew it was perimenopause when it completely disappeared at 42 and never came back. And
Mm,
here's the kicker, ready? I thought I was pregnant.
of course. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Um, okay, I love this. So, how did you leave your stressful job and start pursuing this as your like passion project and turn career?
Yeah, so I had to take a time out for a little bit. I had to take a time out and really step back from working 16, 18-hour days. I had to cut it down to 7.
Mhm.
And that gave me a little bit of room to get my workouts in, figure out my nutrition, figure out my food. I wasn't used to meal prepping or meal planning at all, so I had to learn how to do that. There's a bit of a learning curve, but once you figure it out, it becomes effortless and automatic. And yeah, I had to give myself a little bit of time. And then little by little, my transformation started being noticeable to a lot of neighbors and friends and just people around me that would see me on physically. And they started asking me for help. So I started helping everybody, but it was in a non-professional way. So this is, 6 years ago. And I was like, I can't really officially help you. I don't have any of the certifications. And so people started encouraging me, well, get the certification. I need you to help me officially. So little by little, I started getting all the certifications, right? So emotional eating, certified trainer, certified nutritionist, hormones. And now I'm taking a course with Harvard Medical School on lifestyle medicine. So I'm just continuing to go all the way with this because it truly is a life-changing type of lifestyle where you take ownership and you're empowered to live the type of life that, fulfills you.
And okay, so you got some certifications, and then how did you first say like, okay, I'm taking clients, right? All these people were reaching out to you. At what point did you turn it into work?
Well, yeah, I mean, people were coming to me. I wasn't going to
Hmm.
them. And so
Yeah.
people could see it. Because, they knew where I was at, let's say 2 years before. And so everybody wanted to know, like, what are you doing? How did you do it? And so when people would ask, you say, yeah, I'm taking on clients.
Okay. And it slowly just built from there.
Exactly. Hmm.
And what did you do to turn it into like a framework for yourself? Like you coming from, 16-hour work days, granted you're reducing down to like 8, but how did you structure your actual work day so that you were taking care of you and your family and your clients?
So when I was in the transitionary period between the two businesses,
Yes.
hmm so the first 2 hours of the day were dedicated to my training.
Hmm.
Then the rest of the day was work and children.
Okay. And were your children aware that you were working on this, or how did you handle this with them?
Not really. I mean, we didn't really talk about it. I don't really talk about my body image, or, food in general.
Hmm.
They were just living and seeing it happen. I do talk
Hmm.
about the importance of eating protein and staying
Hmm.
off of processed food or sugar and things like that. So we do talk about those aspects of packaged food and what the ingredients are and what happens when you eat a lot of sugar. But they were very supportive. I mean, sometimes they would put notes in the cabinet. It's like, Mom, do not eat the whole jar of Nutella.
Well, I mean, and they must have noticed when you had an 80-pound weight loss, right? Like, did they ever comment on it, or they just sort of saw it along the way?
My kids both say they never thought I was overweight in
Hmm.
their eyes. They
Yeah,
just don't look at us. They don't look at us that way.
yeah. So, okay, so at this point, what are the most important parts of what you teach your clients in terms of what to eat, how to think, and what body movements to do?
Absolutely. So we start with a full audit, right? So the first thing that we want to look at is what is the current lifestyle? What does a typical day look like? What does a typical week look like? What do typical 2 weeks look like? What do you eat? How much of it do you eat? How much do you move? What does your sleep look like? What does your hydration look like? What does your stress look like? And then from there, I create a plan that meets you where you're at, but challenges you just a tiny little bit, potentially into maybe changing how much protein you're eating, maybe potentially walking a little bit more. It just really depends on where each person is at.
Can I
Sometimes
break one thing down with you? Because I feel like we always hear you need more protein, you need more protein. What is the protein doing for your body?
what does the protein do for your
Yeah,
body?
like
Well,
why do we need, let's say for women in perimenopause, 100 grams of protein? How is it helping us?
so there are about 300 different functions that take place just by sitting here. I'm utilizing and using protein to regenerate cells, to regenerate skin, for hair growth, nails, all the different to breathe, all the different functions in your body that take place automatically are utilizing protein and minerals and different nutrients. So when we do not provide enough protein, we're basically not giving our body the fuel or the material that it needs in order to regenerate. I think I might get this wrong, but I believe every second we're regenerating about 30 million cells. as just sitting around, right? And so when we don't have sufficient fuel, or when the fuel we give our body is not the best quality, right? So if think about it, when you go to the gas station, you have all the different options of what you're going to put in your car. When you put in sub-quality fuel into the vehicle that we call our body, it's just not as the quality of the cell regeneration is just not as good, right? And so because we lose about 1 to 3% of muscle in our body after the age of 30, not only do we need enough protein to retain our muscle, but to also continuously to change our body composition, right? So because ultimately we're looking for more lean muscle mass, less body fat, regardless of how much we weigh. Now, the other thing is that a lot of times when we are working out, let's say we're lifting weights and we're not eating a sufficient amount of protein, we don't see any strength adaptations, right? And so somebody that's going to, they're going to the gym, or they're working out at home, or they're doing resistance training of any sort, using dumbbells or machines or whatever it may be, they want to see results, right? So it's a signal for more motivation. It gives you a source of motivation. And so when you're not eating enough protein, you don't necessarily see the type of aesthetics or physique results that you might want. So there's lots of reasons. Hormones is another one. You want to eat sufficient amount of protein in order to help regulate all of the different hormone systems in the body. You want a ton of reasons. I read somewhere the other day that we need at least 90 grams of protein just for normal functions, just to do all the normal things, automatic things that the body does.
Mm. Okay, so like me, you're a carb lover. And I want to talk about why carbs, I guess, why carbs get the bad rap that they do and how to healthfully incorporate them into your lifestyle.
Mhm. So it depends on what kind of carbs, right? Uh, if we are talking about vegetable carbs or carbs that come from vegetables, um, I can't label them as bad. They've gotten a bad rep, I think, over the years, but that's not necessarily true.
What would that be like a sweet potato or a squash of some kind, cauliflower? Like what vegetables are high carb?
Well, you have starchy vegetables, which are starch, right? So there's two types of carbs, the carbs from vegetables and the starchy carbs. You can get starchy carbs from rice, quinoa, pasta, bread, etc. Or you can get starchy carbs from sweet potatoes, bananas,
Okay.
vegetables like that, like root vegetables. Corn is another one. So if you are consuming more starchy vegetables, overall, there have been quite a few studies where they followed a few thousand people over the course of 3, 4 years, and they have found in the study that people that ate more starch gained weight a little bit more easily. Now, carbs are also tomatoes, squash, cucumbers, apples, cherries, strawberries, blueberries, all of these, right? And so carbs are necessary in order for the body to be able to have energy, right? They provide energy to the muscles in order to function properly. And they're required, right? You can't really live without carbs. I think some of those types of diets that completely cut out carbs are not necessarily always sustainable. It might work for some people for an extended period of time, but I just don't see how you can sustain that for life. So carbs are essential.
Mm. And what I always think about like chickpeas, because I feel like so many people think a chickpea is a miracle food, and it is. It's great because it has protein, but then I think you're not supposed to have that because it has so many carbs. Like, what do you do with those healthy foods for you that are kind of both?
So chickpeas are, I believe they're considered starchy carbs. And
Okay.
they're fantastic. I love legumes. It really
Hmm.
what the thing to know about how to structure your plate is not that you need to cut out carbs or fat or protein. It's about creating a plate that's balanced. So you want to have protein with every meal. You want to have a large amount of vegetables with every meal, a little bit of starch, and the fat I personally like to use as the flavoring. So things like olive oil, guacamole, things like that, right? So that's really what we're looking for, is to have a balanced meal and to have multiple small meals that are balanced throughout the day to keep your blood sugar low. So you want to have every 3 hours, you want to have some type of either snack or breakfast, lunch, or dinner.
And what are your thoughts on dairy?
I love dairy.
Okay. Like, obviously, we don't want to go for the high trans fat cheeses, which is like my personal favorite item. If I could only have one thing for the rest of my life, it would be a variety of cheese. Um, but I mean, I think, what are the good dairies? What are the not great dairies? Do you have concerns about milk? Does it cause mucus in people? And what does that do? Because I think people are always saying how it can cause dampness in your body. Do you think it does? What does it do?
It's all bio-individual, right? So
Mm,
every person has different sensitivities to different foods, some people have allergies to dairy. So it really depends on what you're able to tolerate. If you are able to tolerate dairy, my suggestion is, in order to create a balanced meal, is to possibly go for the 2% milk or 0% Greek yogurt, or the low fat type of cheese, so that you can incorporate enough of the other macronutrients on the plate, because you still want to get protein and you still want to get carbs in addition to the cheese, which is mostly fat and protein.
mm. Does the but you wouldn't count the dairy as like your protein in your meal, right?
Depends on what kind of dairy it is. So most dairy does have protein, but it also has fat. So you want to look at the protein to fat ratio.
What's the ideal ratio? I know it depends on male, female, weight. For somebody like us in perimenopause who look like they're in their 20s but might be in their 40s, what would you say is the best ratio of protein to fat?
It's completely bio-individual. So every person is very different in terms of what their macros would look like. And it really depends on where you're starting from, right?
Mm.
That's the thing with macronutrition, is that it meets you where you're at. It looks at your lifestyle, your body composition, your activity level, what you're used to eating, the type of food that you like. It does not give any restrictions in terms of what types of food you can and cannot eat. It sounds to a lot of people like, oh my gosh, I got to count out these macros, but it's actually very freeing, because you start to see the difference in ingredients, or the difference in macronutrients in all of the different foods. So, for example, a fat to protein ratio, for example, in a full fat type of cheese, is you have a little bit of protein. Again, depends on the portion, right? So portion size is super important. But let's say 50 grams of the best cheese you can imagine that's full fat. You're going to have a little bit of protein in there and quite a lot of fat. So what you want is the opposite. You want to have more protein and maybe about half the amount of fat per serving. And again, you don't have to eat an entire serving in order to satisfy a craving. You can have, half of the serving, for example.
Which makes me think about emotional eating because I know this is one of your specialties. Can we talk a little bit about why? Are we conscious that we're emotionally eating most of the time?
A lot of times it's unconscious. It kind of sneaks up on us, and it serves as a coping mechanism. So a lot of us do it completely in the shadows. We don't even pay much attention to it. We just know that we're just struggling, right? So we start thinking, oh my gosh, I'm struggling with my weight. I keep gaining weight. I can't lose weight, et cetera, et cetera. And we start to look for all the reasons why. Are my hormones out of whack? I'm getting too old. I'm in menopause or whatever it may be, right? Instead of really peeling back the veil and peeling back the curtain and really asking the hard questions and saying, well, how am I standing in my own way? Right? So, what am I doing that may be unconscious that is preventing me from staying on track? Right? And you'll know you're kind of getting off track if you have a specific macro nutrition plan to follow, because here is the kicker. When you're following macronutrition and you have very specific macros per meal, they're usually very satisfying meals because you have quite a bit of protein, quite a bit. They're big plates, they're not small meals. And so you're physically not hungry the majority of the time. And so when I would, and I live this, right? So when I would dive into the Haagen-Dazs container, I was not physically hungry.
Mhm.
I was just looking for that topper at the end of the night that was going to soothe my anxiety or stress or whatever, overwhelming feeling or whatever it was. I was just looking for a different state of a feeling.
Mm. I love this. Can we talk about the retreats that you do?
Yeah, absolutely.
So tell me about, is it the House of Rose? Is that what it's called? Your company?
It's the House of Rose.
The
Mhm.
House of Rose. So tell me about the House of Rose and how you're using all of this to help other women.
So the House of Rose, I call it my love project, and it incorporates all of these modalities. It incorporates nutrition, the food, strength training, yoga, and Pilates, which is great for your nervous system regulation. It incorporates being out in nature. So we do a lot of hiking, we do a lot of restorative yoga at night, and we hang out together. We get to know other women in midlife that are on the same journey and share as much information as possible. They last 5 days, and I think there's only one that's still available for 2025. They've all been sold out. But we're opening up 2026 soon. So we're also have added Sedona and the south of France for next year. So few different locations coming up.
I love that. Why do you think, I feel like retreats are so, I hate the word popular, but like there's a lot of them happening right now in this sort of way. Wellness retreats, women celebrating life with other women. Why do you think there's an uptick in those?
Because we like to do things.
Yeah.
Yeah, I honestly, I feel like our lifestyles are really disconnected in today's world. We're
hmm
either super busy working, we're super busy with our families. We don't really have a lot of time to dedicate just to ourselves to be a little more introspective or to even make new friends, right?
Yeah,
And so retreats give you that opportunity.
I love it. Okay, so just in closing out, let's think. I like to ask people if there's any either advice that you like to give or advice that you were given that you think about, or a cliche or a phrase, something that sticks with you.
Absolutely. So the only way to fail at anything is to quit, right? So if you're on a journey and you're on a path and you're looking for answers and you're looking for a better way, it does exist. It is out there. I know there's a lot of misinformation and that you're going to have to comb through, but that's what a lot of the content that I provide out there, that's what it's for, is to kind of bust a lot of the myths.
I love myth busting. We will, of course, link out to all of your content so people can go bust their myths as well. Thank you so much. Congratulations on that huge weight loss and life shift. Really incredible.
Thank you, Abby. I appreciate it.